You're listening to The Bird Bath, presented by The Fountain Report. I'm your host, Ryan Leach. This week's episode of The Bird Bath is brought to you by Hill's Pet Nutrition. Welcome back to The Bird Bath. Each week we scrape the surface of the news you need to know, so let's get into it. Kicking us off this week is news that cats rule Europe. The European Pet Food Industry Federation estimated their 2022 pet population grew from 340 million to 352 million pets across Europe. Now, I'm going to give it a full name here, the FEDIAF, which is the Federation in Europe for pet food, changed its time frame from gathering data for its most recent report and advised against making year-to-year comparisons. What they're going to now be doing is comparing their reports for 2 previous years before they send out a publication of these things. But even in this new style of doing things, cats remain the most populous pet across Europe. There's 129 million cats across Europe, and dogs are a close second. Well, not exactly close second. They're at 106 million. Ornamental birds, which is a rather fun way to describe birds in people's homes, came in at 52 million, while small mammals, aquaria, and terraria made up an extra 62 million combined. So it was pretty neat to see. I compared this against the numbers in the US, where dogs definitely hold a major lead. There's upwards of 80 million dogs in the United States, but when you compare that across all of Europe, it's pretty interesting to think about. So I know a lot of times we spend the show talking about the US market, and I think forget about the size and scale of what comes from our European friends. So you're looking at, again, 27% of Europeans have a cat in the household, and 25% of them have a dog in the household. So there's some overlap there, but I think you're fair to say that over half of them have pets, and a large number. It's fair to say that half, or in the report here says 166 million European households have some type of pet. So it's a huge market. It's one that obviously is heavily focused on outside the US, but it's something that for companies that are heavily focused in the US, don't forget to think about what's happening overseas. It's a big market and it's a big place to be able to look at. So as a dog person, I'm happy to be in the US and be in the land where dogs rule the roost. But cats are officially and continually keeping Europe under its thumb. Radimal has made a huge announcement. They have expanded their offering beyond radiology to now include internal medicine. Radimal, which is an AI radiology company with a teleconsultancy and teleradiology service on its back end, are offering and increasing their overall service offerings now to be able to allow users, new as well as current users, to be able to get internal medicine teleconsultations done. In the platform, you're able to take all of your x-rays, you're able to get an AI reading directly through the system, through their own proprietary packs as well. And then practices are able to expand their functionality to be able to utilize specialists and now internal medicine doctors. And they can send over information such as current diet, medications, patient environment, travel, vaccination history, any complaints, and they can push all of this through the Radimal system. So now when you're looking for a consult, you can have your radiographs, you can have your x-rays, you can have your ultrasounds, you can have an AI read to give you an instant understanding of what you're looking at there. Plus, you can now add in internal medicine. I know they've got more things planned and cooking in the background, but this was one that seemed pretty interesting and pretty neat to see. It's a company that's doing some cool stuff around taking AI and not pushing it as a requirement for the utilization, but making it something that's available for people to be able to understand better what AI can and cannot do within the clinics. Sylvester, here we go with another AI story, but this one was great too. Sylvester AI has just closed their $1 million pre-seed investment round, and it was led by Metiquity Ventures. They invested $400,000 in this $1 million pre-seed round. And I thought it was pretty neat when I was researching Metiquity, and the way that they explain their investment strategy is that they say we invest in companies on the cusp of growth, which I think is a fantastic way to describe what Sylvester is doing. Sylvester has an innovative platform. They have sort of two sides of their business. One is their app, which allows pet parents to be able to utilize facial expressions to provide real-time assessments of their cat's comfort level. And now the big thing that I believe this investment is helping to support is the growth of Tably, which is their API, which can now be embedded in other software. So if we're getting too technical here, just imagine taking that front end, the app that you love to use and that you're able to participate with, and now you can take that same software, and instead of people having to engage in it through an app, you can actually get that same utilization across all of the different tools you're using. So we're probably going to continue to hear a lot more about what Sylvester's doing. They're definitely pushing the boundaries forward on, again, an imaging utilization of AI. We just talked about Radimal and how they're using it for radiology and internal medicine. And Sylvester is taking feline pain scores and feline discomfort through an image, a photo, to be able to actually score what's going on inside the minds of cats. So Europe, big cat world, maybe they're going to care about this a lot more too. So keep your eyes out, and congratulations to Susan and the entire team at Sylvester and Metiquity. Welcome to the vet world. We're very happy to have you. If you're looking for another route into the veterinary industry, or in this case, the animal health and pet care world, Camp Bow Wow has announced that they're doing a huge cash incentive for new franchisees to sign as they're looking to do an aggressive growth strategy. Franchisees that sign up and are eligible will receive 50% reduction in their royalty fee rate and a waiver of the minimum monthly royalty during the first 12 months of operation, as well as a $5,000 credit towards the project management fee. So if you haven't messed with franchises before, there's a sort of a booklet of fees that you'll come across, and there's some royalties, management fees, software costs, build out costs, things like that. Well, Camp Bow Wow is trying, it seems, to remove some of those barriers for people to kick off and start. Something that they're offering not only to new franchisees, but existing franchisees as well. And so if you were looking or thinking about a way to be able to expand your footprint personally in the animal health and pet care world, Camp Bow Wow has been making massive waves. We've seen a ton of news around doggy daycare and boarding facilities growing. Couple of weeks ago, we talked about Skip Town. We've talked about Bar K. We've talked about a lot of these companies that are really making a lot of steps in growing what's going on. Like we were just talking about here, there's hundreds of millions of pets, and the age of the pet parent is getting younger, and people are holding on to and continuing to wait to have children longer and having their animals be a more dedicated part of their life. So they're sending them to daycare more frequently. They're, younger people tend to travel and a more spur of the moment. So they're needing boarding. There's a lot of these things that are making a ton of sense as to why we're seeing the growth in this doggy daycare and boarding side of the world. So really neat to see. If, check out Camp Bow Wow. I've always been impressed with the news that comes out from their team, and it seems like they do a really great job there. We hit on technology, we hit on business, we hit on franchises, we hit on investments, but let's get down to science. A study from Cornell University confirms and provides evidence that there's a spillover of avian influenza from birds to dairy cattle across several U.S. states, and that has now led to mammal-to-mammal transmission between cows and cats and raccoons. The researcher, Diego Deal, who's one of the associate professors of virology, said this is one of the first times that we're seeing evidence of efficient and sustained mammalian-to-mammalian transmission of highly pathogenic avian influenza H5N1. We've reported on H5N1 several times, as it's been, it was first began obviously as an infection amongst domesticated birds. It went into wild birds. There have been over 100 million domestic birds that have been infected with this, which in itself is a big issue. But then once it took that jump from birds to dairy cattle, we started to see an increase in regulation. We saw discussions around the limiting or ban of state to state transfer of dairy cattle. And now that we're seeing the efficient transfer of mammal to mammal and cats and raccoons beginning to see this, we're starting to see an opportunity here for an even larger scale issue. Since 2022, 11 humans have been reported in the US to contract and have the symptoms of H5N1. 4 of them were from cattle farms, 7 were at poultry farms, and a few of those even are just in the last few weeks in Colorado. Currently, the data is showing that the infection from human to human is extremely low, but Deal said the concern is that potential mutations could arise that could lead adaptations to mammals spilling over into humans and potential efficient transmission in humans in the future. It's one of those things that we always have to keep our eye out on. We talked about this, and we didn't talk about it on the show here, but I know everyone talked about COVID. And I remember when that first COVID-19 first came out, there was a lot of questions on whether the pets were able to be carriers, if it was a zoonotic disease, if pets' fur was a fomite or an antifomitic, I believe is the correct term there. And we're seeing here there's a continued issue where this H5N1 is not only causing a difficulty in the supply of birds and eggs and the other products that are produced with domestic birds, but now we're seeing an impact on dairy cattle that has been growing over the past year, and we're seeing a potential risk into humans now as well. So big thing to keep our eyes out on. We'll continue to update this. I know every single week in the Fountain Report, we've got a new update about the spread and the growth of this, but seeing some of this data from Cornell was a really interesting take and something that I thought was important to bring to everyone. As always, if you're looking for more on these and other stories, join us by subscribing to the Fountain Report. There's always a link in the bio, and don't miss out on any episodes by subscribing and rating the show. For the Bird Bath, I'm Ryan Leach. See you next week.